You are listening to the Seeds of Revolution, Daughters of the Whirlwind podcast. The revolution is live. Welcome back.
Welcome. I'm Dr. Baba Sunni-Ali.
I'm Aisha T. Obafemi.
And I am Princess Medaya Yisrael.
And we are Daughters of the Whirlwind.
Yay!
Yes. So today we are doing a salute. We are saluting revolutionary Babas
Ashe.
in our lives.
Yes.
Including our own.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so many community Babas that we'll share some names a little bit later. But we're going to start with talking to our Baba, Bilal Sunni-Ali, and just a little bit about him for folks who don't know, because he's graced us with his presence once before here on the show. And so Bilal Sunni-Ali is a musician, a performer, a composer, an educator, community activist, movement builder. He also has performed on stage, playing saxophone, flute, and harmonica with Gil Scott-Heron, Brian Jackson, Doug Karn, Stevie Wonder, Wynton Marsalis, the American Symphony Orchestra, Jimmy Hops' Spirit, Earl Turbington, Pharoah Sanders, and many, many more. He's taught music and given lectures in public and private schools, as well as university campuses. He guest lectured one of my classes one time. Had everybody calling him Dr. Sunni-Ali. He's lectured at community institutions, locally, nationally, and internationally. So there's so much that we can say about Baba Bilal Sunni-Ali. That's just a small snippet.
Right.
Of who he is. And I'm sure that he'll be sharing with us a bit more as we have a conversation with him today. But we really wanted to take this time to shower him with our love, with our gratitude, to express our gratitude and our appreciation for him parenting us.
Yes.
You know, all of these years, being such a well-rounded Baba, you know.
Yes.
So, you know, being very serious. Very. Dishing out the discipline growing up, but then also dishing out all the jokes, all the laughs, all the fun. And so we want to thank you, Baba Bilal, for that.
Yeah.
Asante Sana, Baba.
Yes.
Thank you, Daddy. We definitely, one of the greatest gifts that the Creator gave him was being a father. And he actually embodied it so well, or he embodies it so well. He's still present here with us. And now even being a grandfather, you know, Pop.
Yes.
Pop.
And I think,
and the uncle. His nieces and nephews love
Uncle Bilal.
Uncle Bilal, they love that man.
So it's just it is a blessing though to have you as our father, and to have you be so much to others, but you know, to know you in a way that we get to know you and we get to honor you in the same way others do as well, because what you gave to us, you gave to them, and what you gave to them, you gave to us. And so so many people, just even community people, he has a lot of community sons and daughters who be like, how's Baba? What Baba need? I'll be like, okay, let me get my list together.
Yes.
So we, I'm sure, you know, you feel it, Daddy. And we're just here to let the world know that we, you know, we want to show it.
Yes. So everyone, welcome our Baba Bilal to the podcast.
Woo, 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 woo.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I would, as I've been known to say that if I would be happy, and I am happy, just knowing that y'all exist, not knowing And if I didn't know who your parents were, if I wasn't related to you, the work that you're doing, I'm happy and proud that it's being done. And the fact that you're my daughters is just a plus on the situation, because the work that you're doing is necessary work in this time to take place. People need to understand. People need to understand who you are, so it helps them to understand, who I am, to understanding who you are. But it helps me understand. It helps me understand who I am. The more I listen to these podcasts, and it's an honor to be a part of it, and I take it as my duty to be a part of it. And even though I almost forgot about it.
Of course you did, because you have 10,000 Zooms and other meetings.
Yeah, and I got to get on a Zoom.
We got you. You have limited time with us today. We understand.
I can, but
on the schedule.
They can wait if take time.
Yeah, they might have to wait. No.
Let them wait.
They can wait a few minutes.
Okay.
But
we're honored.
Again, thank you all, and thank you, WRFG.
Yes.
Thank you for all that you do, continue to do, and you're the reason why we are sitting here.
Yes.
We're just a reflection.
Yep.
Sitting right in the same seats we sat in.
The same one.
Look at God.
Look at her. Yep.
Yes.
It's an honor.
All praises due to Allah.
Yep. And it just shows the work that, you and Mommy and Baba Ahmed and our other mothers and uncles and aunts did. It reflects in the work that we do today. So everything that we're doing really is just a salute to you all.
Yeah, a continuation.
Yes. A carrying it on. Carrying it on.
And speaking of that, Daddy, one of the things that we wanted to do, in addition to honoring and saluting you, is saluting our revolutionary Babas, in the whirlwind, in the ancestral realm. And so we wanted to call on you as our elder, to call on some of the names of the revolutionary Babas of the New African Independence Movement, of our African liberation struggle, almost a libation, if you will, a roll call. If you can call on some of those names.
Roll call. My name is Pop.
He ain't gonna stop.
Shabu, yeah.
Roll call.
Well, I would. There are many, but there are some, like I noticed the other day, you mentioned that there were many mamas, but there were some mamas that you just have to call on. And I think in our movement for national liberation, it's important to always recognize my father, Robert Johnson from Rotan, Honduras, who was your grandfather, and my grandfather, your great-grandfather, Roger Johnson, also from Rotan, Honduras, and Tommy Johnson, and William Johnson, his great-grandfather, who all of them were born and raised in Rotan, Honduras, except for my father, who was born there, but he happened to be raised in New Orleans, which brought us closer to New Orleans, where my mother was from. And I've heard you give honor to my mother, and just wanted to make sure that we give honor to those from Rotan, Honduras, and in recognizing my mother, that we give honor to her father, Eugene Alexander Thompson, who many people know. I'm reminded of a family reunion that we went to, and we saw that there was a cemetery named after our grandfather. And me and my cousins, we asked, why did this town name its cemetery after our grandfather? And we were told that back in the days when the Klan would hang black people and say, leave them niggers hanging, that my grandfather, your great-grandfather, didn't stand for that. He'd take the bodies down and bury them and call for a community gathering to honor those who had been slaves. Because they were martyrs. They were heroes. They were people who stood up against the established white aristocracy. If we can even refer to it as aristocracy, but stood up to the white mobs. I think that's a more befitting title to refer to them. Stood up to these white lawless mobs, and created within the community an allegiance and a salute to those who were martyrs, and not to obey the Klan, but to obey our own what our own soul was telling us that needed to be done. And that caught on. We're glad to say that, everybody didn't do it, but it caught on. And it stopped being a thing where you hear people being hung, but you hear people of bodies being taken down. That part of the lynching, the silence was brought to that. And would also find it important to always recognize our father spiritually, who is a teacher, taught Islam to many of us, to myself and your uncle Sekou and Matulu, and was the paternal biological father of your uncles Lumumba Abdul Shakur and Zayd Malik Shakur. I'm talking about El Hajj Saladin Shakur, who was an associate, a companion of El Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X. He was part of a Jamaat known as the Andanye Allahu Universal Arabic Association, which was headed by Sheikh Hesham Jabba in Jersey City, New Jersey. And Sheikh Hesham Jabba is noted as the one who did the janazah prayers, who did the funeral prayers for Hajj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X. And so we recognize in our Abba, Haji Shakur, and we recognize in his Imam, Hesham Jabba, who also did the funeral procession, led the prayers, and led the procession for your uncle, Zayd Malik Shakur. So, and that Hesham Jabba's family have been tied to the Shabazz family because they continued to do the janazahs, funeral prayer, for Betty Shabazz and one of the daughters of Betty Shabazz. So it's been a continuous close knit tie between Hesham Jabba and his children and El Haj Malik Shabazz, Malcolm X and his children, and Haji Saluddin Shakur and his children, and all of us who continue to exemplify what it means to be Muslim, what it means to be Black revolutionary nationalist, what it means to be internationalist, what it means to be culturally tied and to the ongoing struggle for Black liberation. And once I say those names, then it's also extremely important that we raise the name of your grandfather, Elijah Egbalola, who was the Minister of Defense at the same time that he was the Vice President, the Eastern Regional Vice President of the Republic of New Africa. Mm-hmm. And as Minister of Defense, he was not just the Minister of Defense of the people who were part of the provisional government of the Republic of New Africa, but the entire Republic of New Africa, the entire African nation. Mm-hmm. He was the Minister of Defense by many military formations in the New African nation, and that who had taken part in the struggle for the national liberation of New Africa. And so just want to always, remember these particular fathers, and think about and remember the many other fathers who were close to us, who, like, if we went on to talk about all of them, it would, we would definitely be telling people to wait till we finish.
Right, it would be hours and hours.
Just like when we call out the names of political prisoners and prisoners of war and exiles, we have a 10-minute or 15-minute program called Political Prisoner Report. And if it would take the whole 15 minutes if we just wanted to call the names of all the political prisoners. It would take that 15 minutes every week to not give reports, just to call their names. So it's important that the names that we call on, that people use Google and as a first step toward finding out who these people were.
Right.
Who these people were, and who are these organizations and formations that we spoke of, that these people led. And so it's important to encourage everyone to do that, and let that be a start toward you yourself stepping toward. When I say you yourself, I'm not just talking to my children who are there in the studio, but I'm talking to all those who adhere to be a part of the ongoing national liberation struggle for the liberation of self-determination of Africans in America, or New Africans, as we prefer to call ourselves.
Thank you for that, Asante.
Yes.
And Ashe to all of those names that you named.
Yes. And I wanted to, you mentioned what our great-grandfather Eugene did. And it's similar to the story of what our great-grandfather George Austin did, who is our grandfather Elijah Odegbalola's father. He resided in Milledgeville, Georgia, and very similar story where he would ride on his horse and ride through and take down the bodies of those that were lynched, of women and men and children, and return them to their families, to have an honorable burial and to bring some closure and peace to those families. And he was ran out of Milledgeville, Georgia, and had to change his last name, so it's a lot of different histories, but the similarities in these stories, it just shows how connected we are as a people. It's so many of those stories. I'm sure so many people have similar stories of similar heroism in their family, of their grandfathers, great-grandfathers, during those times where it was, you were threatened with your own life if you even, dare to give honor to one that was lynched by this, by the hands of those oppressors at the time, the colonizers. So, it's a beautiful history that you just gave, and it just also shows where part of our strength comes from, and our what do you call it? Our drive to not. I won't say it's to fight everything, but to stand for what's right, to stand on principle, and to be disciplined in our stance. And they were disciplined in the work that they did, and that's revolutionary. A lot of people think revolution is just saying that you're a part of a certain organization, or but revolution means change, the word itself. So and so many people did revolutionary acts.
I was gonna say, it's actions.
That we have to honor them, and we have to speak about those, and understand that most of us are revolutionaries. Most of our ancestors are revolutionaries.
Right.
Yeah. Those who didn't make it and those that did. Yes. Because those who didn't make it, they acted in their revolution of what they wanted to do and what they were not going to submit themselves to any further. So, we thank them for their life that they gave, for us to be surviving today. So, honoring our Babas is a lot, like Daddy, you said earlier, we honored our mamas, but the Babas is so important because the work that Babas do, is different. And of course, us as women, we don't know it all, and we can't identify with it in the same stance as our fathers and our brothers and our uncles and our cousins, but we can appreciate it. And I know for me as a woman, just to know that I have that strong blood in me, it gives me so much pride, and it also gives me so much. It allows me to even stand taller, to say, "Oh yeah, I could do that," because I know that this is what my grandfather and my great grandfather and great grandfather and great grandfather did, and my father. So that history is important, and I thank you, and I also pray that others will, seek out their history. Because what you don't, when you don't know,
who was your grandfather
right,
and your great grandfather,
right? Because when you don't know it, you fall into this trap of feeling like you don't have anything to stand on. But I will be sure to say that I believe most of us, if we look back, most of our grandfathers and fathers did some heroicism for the people. We had our Uncle Toms and stuff, but
oh wow,
balance. But
balance.
Most of know if your grandfather was Uncle Tom or not. But we thankful. Just know your history. Know your history. Yeah.
What I was gonna say too was the history that Daddy laid out, just our own, familial history. And history, within the African liberation movement, is also reflective of, as Afua said, as Princess Madai said, the fact that as African people, we have always resisted, as Daddy said earlier, the establishment, white vigilantes, white mobs. We have always resisted, contrary to popular belief or Kanye's belief, slavery was a choice,
Right.
And all this other
That's Kanye's
nonsense.
belief.
History shows, when you look at uprisings and maroon communities,
Yes.
societies, even in every arena, in every geographic space where African people we were resisting in various forms.
Yes.
We can lay out all the different ways in which you can resist. You spoke to that earlier too, that revolution didn't look just one way, and resistance didn't look just one way.
Right.
It was varied, and it had to match the violence that was being enacted
At that time, yes.
physical, spiritual,
Emotional.
emotional, and psychological
Yes.
violence. And so our resistance strategies have looked different in response to those things. And Baba Bilal, you didn't mention this, and I know
I was getting ready to say something.
this is a longer conversation. But one of the other things that makes me proud of the history that you laid out is knowing that our grandfather and grandfathers, greats and greats that you mentioned, who were, born and reared in Roatan, Honduras, were also what you call Garifuna people, who were people who are, right? The Garifuna are still alive.
Yes. And well.
Tens and thousands of them, not only in Central America, but all over the United States as well. And I'm sure other parts of the world. But you didn't speak to this history, but the Garifuna are African people, who retained their African culture, and who were never enslaved. And so Daddy and I talk about that history a lot. It's actually a part of a couple of research projects that I'm doing. So I refer to Daddy's wisdom, and we have these conversations a lot. But I wanted to mention that as well. In terms of thinking about, African resistance and that being a part of not only our familial legacy, but the legacy of Black people.
Yeah. When bringing that up, it makes me bring up another aspect of understanding who we are as a people, and that's the Garifuna came to the Western Hemisphere long before the slave trade brought Africans to the Western Hemisphere. And when they came around 800 AD or 900 AD, when they came to the Western Hemisphere, they found other dark-skinned people already living here.
Right.
It's not like when we studied the history of Abu Bakr, they said he prepared 2,000 ships. So that's different from an explorer. They talk about the European explorers. They were exploring, just going out to find out what they could find.
Right.
But when you have your society prepare 2,000 ships and you make provisions, you kind of know where you go.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Oh yeah.
So it speaks to a whole nother sense of who African people are and who they understood themselves to be. Before this slave trade business got started, and that we had not only traveled to this part of the world, but had traveled back to that part of the world time and time again. So we have, like in Charleston, South Carolina, you have relics and bones of Africans over 10,000 years old, showing the existence of African community in South Carolina, what they call South Carolina, over 10,000 years ago. And we have all through Louisiana. I know, and unfortunately, we came to New Orleans, Louisiana, when we came from Roatan, Honduras, and our family. And you know, growing up in New Orleans, the Indians, here they come. Indians, here they come. So we know that there's a great deal of indigenous that a lot of people have just not bothered to recognize, not bothered to study. And one of the things that our Imam Jamil Al-Amin has said that, you know, all the Muslims should study the history of the indigenous nations that surround you. And that would mean that the indigenous nations that you are a part of, because the closest indigenous nations are those nations that you are yourself a part of. And so it's important to study that history and to understand the indigenous black and the black indigenous as one. And we can't, you can't say, well, I'm half Indian or I'm 1/4 Indian, or like they did in Louisiana, like the Europeans tried to do. They created classes of people called octoroons, if you will. Like we had one, if one of your great grandparents was melanated, you were octoroon, and then they had different classes were trying to break it down to who you were based on how many, what people of what different nations your grandparents and great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents came from. But we recognize that even if we had this understanding, if we had this ability to travel, that's just a part of us. And so we don't even have to get into I'm half Cherokee, or I'm half Choctaw, I'm 1/4 Choctaw.
I got Indian in my family.
Yeah, and we all West Indian anyway.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, before you go, Baba, because there's one thing that we didn't say, and I know your schedule's so busy, so you didn't even catch us on it this time. You always say that you are originating member of the notorious Bronx and Harlem chapter of the Black Panther Party. So can you talk about that?
Briefly.
Oh, yeah. I was one of the first people who started organizing the Black Panther Party for self-defense in the Bronx. And at that time, we didn't have a chapter in Harlem. So we organized the Bronx chapter and the Harlem chapter together. And I use the term notorious because the Black Panther Party is seen by the state as being enemies of the state, not enemies of the people, but enemies of the state, because we stood for things that the state didn't stand for. And we were called notorious because we led at the same time that we led a UN demonstration at the UN, we also led a rent strike in Harlem simultaneously. And the National Black Panther Party office was saying that the rent strike in Harlem was not sanctioned by the National Black Panther Party. But we didn't care. We knew that our people needed the organization that we were offering them because they needed that. They needed that in order to survive. In order to be able to build, in order to be able to save money and create our own repairs on these buildings and point this out to other builders. So we were notorious because we were constantly fighting. We were constantly fighting for self-determination and constantly fighting those who claimed to be for self-determination but had not looked at it. Another reason that we were considered notorious is because we carried on warfare against those who brought drugs in our community. I know the National Central Committee said that we shouldn't do that. That we shouldn't. But how you going to fight? How you going to fight for liberation, and you got people bringing drugs in the community, and you're not even trying to stop that? Yeah. And then another reason we were called notorious. This is just a few of the reasons, but another reason we were called notorious is because the National Central Committee said at the time, during the time of and again, you're going to need to go and do some history, but during the time of Huey Newton's legal campaign, there was a slogan that was launched, a slogan that said, "Free Huey, or the sky's the limit." Free Huey, or the sky's the limit. And the day before the verdict went down, there was a national flurry around the country saying, we want people to understand that free Huey, or the sky's the limit, means that we will go to the highest court in the land in our attempts to free our comrade Huey Newton. And we want people to understand that. And that when they said, we need somebody to tell the Harlem chapter so that the Harlem chapter falls in line. So then they came and asked me to tell the Harlem chapter to fall in line behind this line which we considered a jive line. How you going to say free Huey, or the sky's the limit? And then you're going to change what the sky's the limit meant. So when I called back to Harlem, called specifically to your uncle, Lumumba Shakur, and the verdict had been in, and they asked, "What's the word?" I said, "The sky's the limit." The notorious Bronx Harlem chapter. The next day, the newspaper said, Huey found guilty, Panthers keep word. There were police cars shot up, there were police cars turned over, there were police cars set on fire. And so it was said, even though many chapters of the Black Panther Party didn't adhere to that, sky's the limit. The notorious Harlem Bronx chapter, we definitely adhere to that, the sky's, and adhere to it today.
Okay, now, all right.
Thank you for sharing.
Well,
yes, that was our notorious Baba Bilal Sunni-Ali, people.
Right.
If you didn't know, now you know.
And like he said, Google some of these people that he mentioned.
It'll share some things.
Yeah.
right. So,
Yep. So thank you, Daddy. And
Thank you so much for keeping up the struggle and for continuing doing as you all are doing. And I gotta go.
We do.
Yes, we know.
Appreciate your time.
yes.
as Daddy said, when you get me to start talking,
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep talking.
Yeah.
So we love you. Thank you so much for your
Yes.
time today, and we'll talk to you soon.
Nakapenda.
Nakapenda. Peace.
And
All right, Baba Bilal.
Yes.
Yay. Such a powerful voice in the way he tells stories.
Yes.
And the way that he tells multiple stories in
one.
one. You ask one question,
I was like, oh, okay.
and surely you will get a couple of different
Yes.
topics
Yes.
and subjects and,
And a lot of
definitions
history.
and history all
Yes.
rolled into one. So
Yes.
we give thanks for that.
Yes,
Yes,
we do give
and-
thanks for that. And as we continue on with honoring our Babas,
Yes.
so I don't think we talked a whole lot about it because it just wasn't necessary. If you get it, you get it.
Yeah.
But, for the listeners, I will explain this or say this in the way that we say it.
Yes.
So we have a large family. We come from a large family. And, some people would say it's blended, but we are just a large family.
Yes.
We don't half and we don't step.
Ain't
right.
no half stepping.
So, and I say that to say that Baba Bilal is my Baba. Although he married my mother when I was 9, he is my Baba. So my Baba Ahmed Obafemi, my biological, who is all of our Baba Ahmed,
That's my Baba. That's my
it belongs
Baba.
to all of us. And that's just how it's always been, and that's why there were originally 17 siblings.
Yes.
We've lost a couple, but so when I say that to people, they're like, "You have what?" So yes, but that is just who we are, and we love it that way.
Exactly.
And I am honored to be the eldest daughter of those said siblings. So we're gonna now pay tribute to our Baba Ahmed, who transitioned to the realm of the ancestors February 18th of 2022. So Ahmed Obafemi, Ahmed Chaka Zulu Obafemi,
Say that.
was born on September 25th, 1938 in Valhalla, New York, and raised in New Rochelle, New York by Catherine and William Brewster Dixon. His parents, he was the oldest of 10. He had an amazing singing voice, and he started singing at, very young teenage age. And he founded a few singing groups. The Love Lords was the most popular, and they recorded some records. They won Showtime at the Apollo. He became friends with Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, and, that was his life for a bit. And then he became a citizen of the Republic of New Africa. And at that time, he immediately was targeted because he was so outspoken and, was speaking about the injustices. And so he became a political prisoner for a time. And all of our parents have been political prisoners at one time or another. So Baba was a founding member of Freedom Now, the New African People's Organization, and the Malcolm X grassroots movement. He was a key organizer in Harlem. And he was a major catalyst in the change from Lenox Avenue to Malcolm X Boulevard in Harlem. Ahmed lectured throughout the U.S. on numerous college campuses, community rallies, radio and television programs. He has represented the New African Independence Movement internationally in Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Libya, Ghana, Puerto Rico, Nicaragua, Cuba, Germany, France, Canada, and South Africa. And there's more that I'm sure that I'm missing. His work has initiated alliances with national liberation struggles and progressive organizations inside the U.S. borders and worldwide. Ahmed is a father, grandfather, great-grandfather, brother, uncle, godfather, cousin, comrade, mentor, and friend. And there's so much more to the story, but that's just a little bit to give you a little bit of history on who our Baba Ahmed Chaka Zulu Obafemi is, because he still lives. Ahmed lives in the people's struggle. His spirit is alive.
Yes.
Ahmed lives in the people's struggle. He will never die.
Ashe.
We love you, Baba.
Yes, Baba Ahmed. And I know if Daddy was on, he would talk about this. There was such a beautiful moment at Baba Ahmed's celebration of life last year, where Baba Bilal talked about the fact that, they were brothers.
Yeah.
They were
Through and through.
comrades. And they were our fathers,
Yes.
collectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so there wasn't any, ain't nothing,
Yeah.
between
Nothing.
them but love.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
But love and a commitment to be the fathers of all of us.
Of this family.
I want to share just a little bit of a reflection that I wrote after he passed last year. And it says, I vividly remember an encounter one summer not too long ago. Ahmed was talking to someone within earshot of me, and I overheard him say, "That's my daughter." So I turned to look at the person as if to confirm his statement. And the person had a confused look on their face. And this wasn't the only time that this happened. But I remember this particular encounter where the person looked and said, "This is your Baba?" And I said, "Yes." To which they immediately followed up with, "Wait, I thought Baba Bilal was your Baba." And I say, "He is," So the person looked even more confused after that. And Ahmed and I just looked at each other, with that understanding, because what was understood didn't need to be explained.
That's right.
Right.
So Ahmed was in my life all of my life. He was always my Baba, as we said earlier, no half stepping in our family. He and my mother were not exes, they were not what you would call exes, but they were comrades. And like I said before, Daddy shared in this union. It was a union that the three of them had, along with other comrades,
Yes.
to continue the work and continue the parenting of all of us. And so I salute you, Baba Ahmed, today, and every day. Until I take my last breath. I love you. I miss you. The
Yes.
jokes.
Yes.
Once again, another full
Oh, my
human
goodness.
being,
Full.
full of jokes and laughter. I mean, upon walking up on this man, he had something for you, whether
Yes,
it was
he
a
did.
story, a word, a joke. And he always cared about your well-being.
Yes.
He was always like, "What you working on?
Right.
What you got going?"
What you doing?
And he would actually listen.
Yeah.
Because you got some folks that say, "Oh, how you doing?" Or what you up to? And they don't really, care it's just kind of conversation.
Yeah. Passing by.
But for him, he was really invested.
Yes.
And he would take time and actually listen and give you feedback, on what it is that you're working on. So
Yeah.
I give thanks for him as one of my Babas.
Yes.
Yes. And
Yeah,
while
no.
we're doing that, I also wanted to mention, on his biological line, giving honor to my grandfather, William Brewster Dixon, and who was the father of these 10 children. And then my uncles, I'll start with the ones who have, transitioned already. My Uncle John, Uncle Curtis, my Uncle Dickie, Uncle Jarbu, Uncle Sonny, and then my uncles Reuben and James, who are still with us here. Give thanks for them and everything that they have done and contributed to us, over our lifetime. And we thank them for being such amazing, amazing men in our lives.
Yes. Yeah. And, Baba Ahmed was amazing. Like everything my sisters said, spoke everything about him. Missing him, definitely. Missing all his jokes. Just missing the way that he would just look at me and say things to me of how I reminded him of my mother and how he just really loved the way that I took care of things and took care of everyone. And, it was just an honor to share with my siblings because, as we've already said, he wasn't biologically my father, but he was all my life. I've known him as Baba, as my Baba. And so, in those last couple of weeks of his life, to be able to be there and hold his hand and just tell him the things that were on my heart and have those moments with him, is something that I'll never forget. And I appreciate the Creator for allowing me to be able to do that, because a lot of times we don't get the chance to say, see you later.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Yeah.
Or,
Just
you know,
hold
just I love
space.
you. Or
Just
and
hold
just so
space.
they know. And a lot of times we don't even get to allow our parents or our loved ones to go in a space of peace.
Yeah.
You know, and not even knowing if they truly were loved or if they truly were respected and
right.
honored. And one thing I'm thankful for is that, you know, we did a Zoom call for him
Oh, yes.
where so many people were able to reflect their love for him. And one thing that truly, you know, like we said about Pop, is he was a grandfather. And his grandchildren adored Grandpa Ahmed.
And
like,
they were everything to him.
And everything to him. And just like he was our father, he was the grandfather to all of them.
Oh, yeah. All the
And, you know, I loved that even they took their time with him when they interviewed him, and they would ask him questions, you know, and he would have his jokes and serious times with them and teach them. Every time he talked to us, just like Baba Bilal, it was a lesson. And I'm so appreciative of all the lessons, all the jokes, all the time. And just as we said earlier, you know, we all have our special relationships. And I felt like, you know, me and him had a very special relationship. And I appreciated the fact that he took every opportunity to joke with me about the Sabbath or just about whatever I was doing. But he also always, you know, told me how proud of me he was. And that, you know, that's something that continues. Well, that's something that allows me to continue the work that I'm doing, is knowing that, you know, he was proud and that I'm continuing to make him proud and all of our ancestors proud. But, you know, just thankful that I had more than one father, because some people don't even have a father. So I had two, and I'm blessed. I'm thankful. And I pray that, you know, these stories that we're, you know, giving out lifts up others so that they can honor their fathers. And then even become better men so that they can be fathers to their children. So, you know, I thank him and I thank Daddy for being the greatest role models of fatherhood
Yes.
that all of us have and had. And even for being such pillars for our brothers and our sons to now, some of them are fathers, and I watch them and I see just the greatness of them being fathers and how they have taken on the principles, the love, the discipline, the joke, all of it, you know, the fun times, and being great in their fatherhood. And I salute them. You know, I salute all of our brothers who are fathers because they are doing phenomenal jobs as fathers. We don't have a deadbeat brother as a father at all. None of our brothers, you know, are out there not doing what they're supposed to do for their children, you know, and I appreciate that in them because that's revolutionary in itself in this day and time in America, because they don't want black men to be fathers. And our brothers have taken that stand, and they take it so like serious, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They do.
And they take being uncles and being role and mentors.
Yeah, 'cause being an uncle is like being a dad.
Yeah, because believe me, they
And
are
being a
definitely
big brother.
being big brother and
Being a big brother,
father to some of my children, and I appreciate it. And my children look at them like,
Oh,
okay.
I never forget the time
Yeah.
when Uncle Chocolate Jamila was trying to go somewhere with him,
right,
and the shoes she had on, I don't know. He was just like, no.
right.
And she looked at me and I said, your uncle said no.
Yeah. Look, when you said that, because I'll be like, they be like, are you afraid of Uncle Chocolate? I'm like, no, but understand that.
He already said what he said.
What he said.
He said what he said.
And if you want to go with him, you better do whatever he said, because I'm not about to try to go. One thing I'm not about to do is have a debate with this man about
What he said. He said what he said.
So I just appreciate our brothers.
I do too.
You know,
I do too.
Jeff,
And I wanted
Jay,
to, yeah.
Chaka,
Kofi,
Ishmael, Paul,
yes,
Assad.
yes.
You know, all of y'all
Out there
fathers,
doing
Abdullah, a great uncle to all of his nieces and nephews.
Warren,
James. You know,
yes.
it's just phenomenal to see you all become men. You know,
Khalil.
Yes,
Khalil.
And
yes.
you know, just to have y'all in our life is so important, and we thank you. And this Father's Day is super special.
It is. It is
super special,
and it means a lot. I wanted to just comment on something you said before, and I know you were saying it for those people. Well, for those men who aren't necessarily doing what they need to do, but I wanted to address what we are sometimes led to believe is a deadbeat dad.
Yeah,
but it's not really.
That's true.
Because there are situations and times where men
speak on it.
You know, are set up in a way, and they want to be in their children's lives, and they're not allowed.
Yes.
And then the narrative is changed to make them look like the bad guy,
right?
And to make it look like they did not
do it.
Right. They did not want to be a part. They do not, they even trying to trying to do what they do, and then it's years later sometimes that the children don't even find out,
right?
Because the man is not bad mouthing their mother or family or whoever is stepping in between them. And I just wanted to bring that up because I think it's unfortunate, and I would love to see more people stand up and call people out on those behaviors, because the children are the ones who are suffering.
That's right.
And that is unfair. Everybody needs their father, and like we've said, we were blessed to have two.
Yes.
And when I tell you it's truly a blessing, it truly is a blessing, because I don't feel like I missed anything.
Yes.
From a dad, and having that. And like Taywa said, like, it's interchangeable. People would see me with Baba Bilal. Oh, y'all look just so like. We were like, thank you so much. We truly appreciate it. And we're laughing, but we're smiling, and it's like, oh. Yeah. And then somebody might come back and be like, I'm sorry, I didn't realize that Baba Bilal wasn't your. I said, but he is.
But he is, right.
And then they're looking at me like,
apology needed.
Right.
Okay. But, but that just goes to show you, just how close, our relationships are, and how important that it has been for us to have those relationships, and for our children to have, grandpa, Ahmed, grandpa, Bilal, pop, that's just what it is. And, it's special. And, I think everyone should experience that. And so I would love for people, if you're listening, you haven't spoken to your father in a while. If you're listening, you haven't spoken to your child in a while. Reach out, send a message. Sometimes it's just who reaches out first. It doesn't mean that the other person doesn't want to hear from you, doesn't want to know that you're okay, doesn't want, you to check on them, to talk to you, and then all it takes is that, and it just might be one conversation, and then y'all can take it from there. But life is too short, so we need to, definitely, life is too short, so we need to love on each other, and be the change that we want to see.
Exactly.
So, I it's important. And I just wanted to say that, for this Father's Day, and especially for those who are here, celebrating without their fathers in the physical, if you have men in your life who are fathers, you have sons who are fathers, nephews, cousins, Uncles. Embrace them, show them love, help them to keep doing what they need to do to be the best fathers possible, because it's on each of us to help each other, and love on one another. So that's my message.
And I want, since I want to say it before I forget.
Oh, go ahead.
Two things. I love the fact that you both brought up, Aisha, in kind of carried forward the idea that you had around, deadbeat and really kind of explaining the nuances around what that could mean. And so I want to say salute to those fathers as well, who, may not be allowed to be a part of your child's life.
Exactly.
And salute to those fathers who have to love their children from afar, who have to send them love, spiritually, emotionally, through phone calls or through whatever.
Through other people.
Right, through other people, through whatever mode of communication or connection that they have.
Absolutely.
And also salute to those sons and fathers who, may have toxic fathers. Because, I completely understand what you're saying, Aisha, in terms of, life being short and reaching out. But then sometimes you reach out and that daddy ain't ready. And that's just a reality that we have, in our communities, in our families, right? Where some fathers are just not able, right, to be healthy fathers, to be loved and to love.
Right.
And so salute to those fathers and sons as well, who have to love their own fathers from afar.
And I wanted to also salute to, my husband. When we married, I had 5 children, and when we started courting, the one thing he said was, "When I marry you, I marry. Well, I don't marry your children, but I take responsibility for your children." And in these years of our marriage, he has done nothing but show that. And I appreciate that because that's what I grew up, with, as we already stated, so marrying him and even watching him do that has been so a blessing for me, because my children, yes, they have their fathers present, but it's something different when your mother marries and that man takes on that role as well. So now that they have more than one father, and it's a blessing, and I'm thankful, because we don't always get that. You know?
And it's helpful when they're understanding too.
Yes,
a story. I think y'all know the story.
Yeah.
I was 9 when Mommy and Baba Bilal got married, and we were in the house, and I would speak. I was very cordial.
Right.
I would speak, but there was no conversation.
Right.
And Mommy said one day, she said, "Aisha, you could talk to him," and he said, "Leave her alone. She has a Baba."
Yeah.
He said, "Just give her time. She's not being disrespectful." And I was like, "Oh, it's so sweet." Like he was like, but he understood, right? He understood.
He protected you in that moment.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing, and it's similar story with Zeke and Prince, because I'm like, "Oh, Zeke, and he's like, give her time. She has a father and they have a relationship. And so for her to accept me has to be on her time and let us build." And now they have a beautiful relationship. And it, like Mommy, I was like, "I get in there, girl, and show that man appreciation." But because we have to realize that that's their relationship. That was you and Daddy's relationship to cultivate. And so that's another part of that fatherhood, as we as women, they can see it. We don't. We're just like, let's get it done. But they're like, no, let's cultivate this healthfully so that when she does need me, she know I'm here.
Exactly.
It's not you got to accept me because I'm your mother's husband. But let the acceptance be, a willing acceptance. So I appreciate that about, how Daddy did that with you and how Prince did that with Zeke. And so many other fathers, I'm sure, are doing that, or men are doing that when they embrace and marry women with children. So it's so many dynamics to fatherhood.
It is. Yes,
and I'm grateful that we've seen and experienced different ones. But, and definitely don't want to. Just happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there,
Happy Father's Day.
To my children's fathers, to my
every day,
my uncles, right?
Yes, all the uncles,
my nephews who have children,
cousins,
like
so many.
And
we love you all.
And like we said, who are father figures? You may not have biological children yourself, but you show up, for the little ones in the family.
Yes, that's right. We
show
appreciate
up and show
you.
out. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day.
Woo.
Blessings. You have been listening to the Seeds of Revolution, Daughters of the Whirlwind podcast. Be blessed.
Look for me in the world.